Many years ago, David Ben-Gurion came to the United States to raise money for the new state of Israel. He met with a financier who wanted to clarify something with him before they sat down. "I just want to be clear," he said to Ben-Gurion. "I consider myself a human being first, an American second, and a Jew third. Do you have a problem with that?" Ben-Gurion responded, "Not at all. In Hebrew, we read from right to left." In a very real sense, as we enter Yom Kippur this year, we feel as if things are going in the wrong direction, like somehow we're going the wrong way. Far too many of us feel hopelessly unfree. It's almost as if there is a strange spell that has been cast upon us, a fog of cynicism and dejection. Tonight, I want to begin to lift that fog. We just prayed the forgiving phrase that addresses Hager Hagar Betocham, the stranger that dwells in your midst. Yet we weren't talking about an outsider or a foreigner. We were instead talking about the alien, incongruous, incompatible parts of ourselves that are inauthentic. Tonight, we begin to annul from our midst that which is specious, apocryphal, and ungenerous. Tonight, we reclaim and restore our better selves. We remind ourselves of how cleansing it feels to be empathic and empowered, how it feels to believe again in others, in ourselves, and in tomorrow. We do this not by absenting ourselves from the clamor and callousness out there. It's real and more deafening than ever. Rather, we begin to vacate it by reclaiming our core, by reconstituting our spirits. We displace the pathogen by replacing the homegrown. We do this by reclaiming our souls, the precious space inside each of us where God is within reach of all thoughts and feelings. How? Natan Sharansky has a brand new book, Never Alone. It begins with the story of his adult bar mitzvah when he's 65 years old and the speech he chose to give on that occasion. He talks in the speech about the 10th plague, and he explains that the first 9 plagues are a face-off between Pharaoh on the one hand and God, Moses, and Aaron on the other. But the 10th plague is different. It is unique in that it expects something from every individual. Each person must step up and participate in the offering of a lamb and publicly marking their doorposts thereafter. As Sharansky writes, each Israelite first must decide to become free, then act free. A similar empowering transition happens with Yom Kippur's evolution. For 1,000 years, when Jerusalem's temple was active, atonement was delegated to the high priest. For the 2,000 years since, it has been dependent on each and every one of us. First, we have to decide to become free from enslaving inclinations. Then, we have to act free. Where do we begin? First, we need to take a new look at how we see others. This is what God expects of us. In the spring, we do so by remembering that we were slaves at Passover. But there's a key revision. We remember slavery not as a source of shame, but as a source of humility and compassion for others. And now, in the fall, we dare not come before God seeking forgiveness unless we have done the same with our neighbors. The good news is we have until October 10th, the end of Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, to achieve this. It's really hard work, apologizing and forgiving. Really hard and getting harder. It's never been as important, however, because we are at the risk of forgetting how to do it and how it feels. Today's cancel culture of blocking or purging those who slight us or whose views differ from ours is actually canceling our capabilities for sincere apology and hard-earned forgiveness. Our muscle memory for these vital life skills is atrophying from inaction. Online activity, hours and hours of daily screen time, make disposal of others a click, a touch, and a swipe away. And we do it not only because it's easy, but also because we're normally only viewing mirrors of ourselves. And I'm not talking about Zoom, where we see ourselves. I'm talking about our views, our opinions, our favorite sites, our preferred bloggers. Everything that is us. That's what we see online. Why in the world would we want to be troubled by anyone who doesn't align or conform with what we want to see? Writer Tara Westover continues to warn about reducing people to caricatures. Prius or pickup truck? Urban or rural? I used to think of Idaho as parochial, she says, but if parochial means narrow-minded and sameness, then New York City is probably the most parochial place I've ever lived. Reducing people to single deeds or misdeeds is also flattening humanity. Consider the difference between calling someone who has lied a liar and saying, "You lied," or someone who has stolen, calling them a thief. When someone's entire identity gets swallowed into a particular wrong, I have to say, none of us would be happy under that kind of scrutiny. Also, as documentarian Dia Khan has noted in her close listening work on jihadists and white supremacists, we need to stop defining people only by what they're against and start listening to what they're for. Basic things like the need to belong and feel loved. These are the things that very often are stronger motivations that recruit and attract their adherents than the objects of their hate. As Atticus Finch tells Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird, you need to climb inside someone else's skin and take a stroll. We all know the difference between a PR apology that's self-serving and sincere contrition. Yet even self-disclosing apologies can bring too much of yourself to bear. Podcaster Sam Harris thinks the best way to apologize is to walk someone through all of your thinking so that they can come to realize that you're the different person now than the person who hurt them back then. By contrast, Caitlin Flanagan thinks apology is less about explanation. She says, instead, I have to own everything I did to hurt another person. I have to confess, I must have hurt you in this way, and in that way, and in that way. And I know that these things were grievously wrong, and I feel terrible, and I need to know if there's anything at all I can do to begin to try to repair this. Here's a little secret. Kol Nidre can be understood as Judaism's healthy cancel culture. We've just prayed that our careless, unconsidered vows should be canceled, made null and void, betelim umevutalim. The key, however, is that in so doing, we actually insource accountability. Canceling makes us more responsible. If we're going to cancel anyone or anything going forward in the coming year, may it not be people. May it rather be the swelling trends that accelerate self-inflation while slowing down opportunities for growth and curiosity. Secondly, we need to apply this annulling and adopting to ourselves. You all know self-care is vital. Yet self-help is often celebrated for what's beyond its capacity. We need to reach beyond ourselves if we have the hope of surpassing our current condition. We've spent a lot of time, frankly, in the last half a year with ourselves. I'm sensing that just like when we have too many apps running at the same time, the processing speed on our device slows down. We need a pause button. If pressing the pause button stops a machine, pressing a pause button helps restart a person. Lately, I've noticed something about how religion is being depicted in popular culture. When things are compared to religion, they aren't being paid a compliment. Political ideology, when characterized as some new form of religious dogma, is so termed to emphasize its impenetrability, its immunity from reason, its exemption from listening or any form of critique. To be clear, fundamentalist religious people earn these attributes and are often very difficult, if not impossible, to coexist with. Yet that's not what makes religion attractive to me or to so many throughout our growing KI community. What we find so meaningful in religion is that it is about being generous, trustworthy, even vulnerable at times. A congregant who is facing an enormous professional challenge recently recalled a conversation with those that she supervises. She said, "I don't know how to move forward. I'm being tested as I've never been tested before. Here's what I think I know. And also, I definitely know that I'm going to need all of your help to get us there. But we'll get there together." This is not the voice of overconfidence or arrogance. It is an authentically religious posture. It's time to annul overconfident religion, to reclaim religion as a source of humility and vulnerability, of trust and generosity of spirit. Again, the healthy kol nidre cancel culture that insources responsibility, betelim umabutalim, setting aside arrogant religion for humble and contrite and spacious and generous religion. I'm reminded of a story I heard Simon Sinek tell this summer. He was having a great deal of difficulty finishing his second book, Leaders Eat Last. He had so much difficulty, he had actually mapped out giving up the project altogether. He would disappoint some people, he'd return the publisher's advance. His exit strategy was all set. For some reason, he called a friend in the Air Force, and he asked him, "What do you do when you have to abandon a mission?" His friend told him a story about years ago, how he and his wingman were about to embark on a mission that was guaranteed to fail. Not only wouldn't they hit their targets, they'd be lucky to come back alive. He looked at his wingman as they were climbing aboard, doubting the mission itself. His wingman said, "This is what we signed on for." Thankfully, the mission was aborted at the last minute, but Sinek's friend then asked him, "Is the material in this new book as compelling as the material from your first book?" Actually, Sinek replied, "It's affected me even more than the book Start With Why did." "Good to know," replied the friend, Because years ago, when I was doubting myself, I picked up a book called Start With Why. It restored my sense of purpose, has made me a better leader, has made me a better person. Simon, he said, this is what you signed on for. We need this book from you. You're not alone. I'm here for you. You're going to complete it. Sinek concludes the story by saying, if you're thinking of quitting, call someone who believes in you. Dear friends, that's what we're doing this Kol Nidre night. We're calling on someone who believes in us. That's our God, who is listening. I realize that each of us have our own beliefs, some of which may have been sorely tested this year, to be sure. But however we conceive of God, I hope we're doing more than talking to ourselves in prayer tonight. If we're willing to posit God's realness, then why not God's here-ness? Why should we automatically assume that the one who made us and sustains us is incapable of the things we're capable of, like feelings and relationships? I deeply believe that God is listening. I believe that there is an air of expectedness beckoning us into the year ahead. Not expectation as a source of guilt or judgment, but as a source of encouragement to embolden our spiritual instincts like the ability to respond and to rebound and to recover. Our ability to respond gives us the agency to turn any cue or any crisis into an opportunity. It reminds us that life isn't merely about something, it's about the opportunity for something. Our rebound agility enables us to regain our stride after we stumble. That's a great functional definition of Yom Kippur. And our recovery capacity becomes available when we're knocked flat on our backs. It enables us to rise again. Moreover, it insists that we refuse to part company with a misfortune until we've extracted something positive from it. To paraphrase Maria Konikova's important new book, likening the playing of cards with life's uncertainty, to know how to lose is to learn something from losing. Thinking about the future occupies a lot of our head space. Behavioral scientists tell us that when we're not concentrating on something specific, we spend roughly 30 to 50% of our time contemplating the distant future. Today's brew of misery and lack of control makes hope very hard to come by. But we should take Arthur Brooks's advice recently, and when he says that we should meet grim predictions with facts and grounded arguments, so that the worst case scenario isn't the only thing that holds our attention. Again, Kol Nidre's healthy cancel culture, insourcing responsibility, annulling debilitating despair, and adopting applied hope. My father was not a religiously punctilious man, but he was astonishingly well aligned with God. I marveled at this for many years, but it was finally really evidenced, most convincingly, in his final hours of life this past August. He got on the same page with God. As my brother and sister and I finished praying the Shema, our dad lifted his hands and tied a bow and moved them apart, as if to say his life was complete. My dear Dad, you knew your life was complete. You'd done it well. You'd lived fully, loved tenderly, and with your agency and dignity firmly in place, you were ready. Dear friends, we don't need to wait for the end of our lives for such alignment. We too are ready for a better year ahead. COVID and cancel culture do not stand in our way. We have lots of living to do this year with the companionship of a dear God who believes in us, to whom we now turn. A loving God who trusts us more than tests us. May each one of us tonight first decide to be free and then act free. Gamar Chatima Tova, for a sweeter, healthier, more spiritually generous year ahead.